Greetings and welcome to Ghost Stories of Washington, Chapter 7, School Spirit Part 2, which includes Lovely Lola, Lucky Haunting, Famous Phantom, Night Shift, and Lightly Haunted. Hopefully you enjoy this episode of Ghost Stories of Washington. Starting off first with Lovely Lola. Central Washington University's Kamola Hall in Ellensburg has a long, mysterious, ghostly tradition. The spirit's name is Lola, and it seems that a legend explaining her presence has sprung up around the rather obvious signs of a haunting. The aroma of perfume will suddenly waft through a room full of men, none of whom have been out of the room for any considerable time. It was like a woman walked past, one man explained. The windows in the room were closed at the time, yet all present were aware of the pleasant odor's sudden onset and its gradual fading. The sweet-smelling lady has even been seen at least once. She appeared in a mirror, but when the young man who caught a glimpse of her reflection turned to see her physical image, he found that he was alone in the room. A wonderfully poignant story has been created to explain the phantom presence in the residence. Lola, a student at Central Washington during the Second World War, is said to have taken her own life in Kamola Hall after being told that her lover had been killed in battle. Tragically, the young woman had been misinformed. Her fiancé was very much alive, but now, of course, Lola wasn't. Unfortunately, nothing in the way of documentation can be found to support this tale. What the legend lacks in accuracy is certainly made up for romanticism. In our next short story, Lucky Haunting. Streeter Hall at Eastern Washington University in Cheney has been haunted since 1967, but after one failed attempt to identify the spirit, no one is any the wiser. As a result, the ghost is still referred to simply as Lucky. The apparition has been seen, heard, and smelled during 1989. A student advisor named Joe had a few very close encounters with Lucky. The first time, Joe was asleep in his room at Streeter when he heard noise from inside his wardrobe closet. If he was scared by that, we can only imagine the poor man's reaction to the events of the next 2 evenings. As he lay in bed the next night, Joe heard the closet door close and latch, even though he could only plainly see that it was already closed. On the third night, he listened in terror as the hangers in the closet banged and clanged as though someone was swatting them. The haunting in that particular room ended abruptly. The next room to be haunted was occupied by an exchange student from Japan. Just as he had been in Joe's room, Lucky was loud and hungry for attention in the visiting students' quarters. This time, the noises were accompanied by foul odors, and that particular student actually saw the figure of the ghost. The specter has also been seen in the hallways and, at last reported, was still active and noisy. The mystery of his presence remained unsolved. In our next story, it's entitled Famous Phantom. Gonzaga University's ghost is probably one of the most famous in the state. The wraith has been the subject of many discussions, newspaper reports, and even chapters in books. This well-recognized, see-through citizen of Spokane resides in the university's music room at Monaghan Hall, but the existence of the ghost predates the school's use of the building. Although the haunted hall has been part of the campus since 1939. It was originally a house of classical Victorian design, which is somehow a fitting style for a classically ghostly presence. The mid-90s were extremely active times for this haunting, with the most intense paranormal activity beginning in the fall of 1974. A member of the cleaning staff who had just finished her duties in Monaghan Hall re-entered the building in the belief that she had left something behind. The place had been empty when she had left moments before, but as soon as she opened the door, she distinctly heard a simple tune being played on the organ. Puzzled, the woman made her way to the room where the organ was kept. The door was locked, and from what she could see under the door, the lights in the room were off. She unlocked the door and found the room empty and the windows locked. No one could have been playing the organ, but she was absolutely sure that this was what she had heard. The cleaning woman ran from the house in fear. Not long after that incident, an instructor stood and stared in amazement as the locked handle on an interior door turned and the door eased open at the will of an invisible hand. No one was on the other side of the door. With any luck, that ghostly encounter prepared the instructor for what he was to witness the following January. That time, he listened as flute music emanated from the empty first-floor studio. Some weeks later, that same instructor was sitting at a piano in the haunted building. He found himself absently playing a melody on the keyboard. The cleaning woman who had heard the ghostly organ music the previous fall happened to be in Monaghan Hall as the instructor absently pecked out the tune. She hurried into the room thinking she'd catch a glimpse of the ghost. When she saw it was the instructor sitting at the instrument, she felt she had to explain her arrival at the room. "That's exactly the tune I heard being played on the organ," she exclaimed. It was only then that the instructor realized that he had, without consciously realizing it, been playing the ditty he had first heard played on the phantom flute. On February 24th, 1975, the musical spirit was seen for the first time. On that date, a group of 5 people assembled in preparation for an attempt to solve the tuneful enigma. While gathering outside the building, they saw a figure at a second-floor window. Because they had been assured that Monaghan Hall was vacant, they immediately rushed in to investigate. During a thorough search of the building, they found nothing, but according to some reports, all present were uncomfortably aware of an unseen presence. A few days later, some of those people who had been involved with the search asked the ghost to leave. The ceremony was apparently interrupted by a concerned passerby who reported smelling something burning. They investigated and found nothing on fire, but the second-floor area smelled strongly of sulfur and ozone. The ritual to end Monaghan Hall of its musical spirits may have been successful. The only other supernatural incident in the building occurred nearly 5 years later. Guards on a routine patrol watched as a blackboard on wheels rolled toward them. As it pressed itself up against one of them, the other guard pushed it away. Of course, one could blame the freakish event on the combination of gravity and a very old house. Or one could blame something a bit more eerie. If a ghost was to blame, however, that prank seems to have been his last hurrah. Our next story here, it's entitled Night Shift. The ghost that is thought to be a resident of the old Spokane Technical Institute building has been a real pest, because all of the encounters with the spirit have taken place in the late afternoon or early evening. It is thought that the ghost dates back to a time when the building was used as a retirement home, before the building was used as an elementary school. But neither the timing nor the activities of the ghost imply any association with children. The Institute's administrative staff has reported hearing phantom footsteps making their way along the hallway and down the stairs. This phenomenon occurs long after everyone else has left the building for the day. In addition, a custodian named Ryan has occasionally encountered some very difficult working conditions. He had heard the phantom footsteps often enough to become almost blase about them, but he was admittedly startled when the noises were followed by the sound of the school's front door opening and closing. When Ryan checked the door, just minutes later, he found it securely locked. On other evenings, Ryan was unnerved by the sounds of voices in the empty building. He also stood outside the building and watched lights randomly turn on and off. Still, the presence was only truly interfered with his work once by taking a full bag of trash and dumping it at the bottom of the stairwell. During the day, the old place has always been as good as ghost-free, and now that the facility houses Apollo College, the phantom may have faded away permanently. And in our last story in this chapter, is entitled Lightly Haunted. Many reliable witnesses have reported seeing a ghost in Everett High School's auditorium. In 1969, during a production of the musical Carousel, a student identified only as Mark T. climbed a ladder to the highest point on the stage area. He needed to secure a rope that had mysteriously come undone. Without the leverage guaranteed by a taut rope, the stage crew could not have been able to close the curtain at the end of the act. In a matter-of-fact manner, Mark made his way up the ladder. The second he reached the top, however, he abruptly shifted his hands, and the feet from the rungs to the smooth outside of the ladder sent him sliding to the floor below in a matter of seconds. Those watching Mark's strange behavior remarked that he was as white as a ghost. It was fully 5 minutes before they were able to calm him into some semblance of coherence. The teacher supervisor on duty, Mr. Reber, scoffed at the boy's claim that he had seen something supernatural. His mocking skepticism lasted just a few minutes, though, because when he looked up to the spot where the youngster had been, he saw a strange orb of light shining in the area where there was no power. Another time, almost the reverse situation occurred. A teacher who was completely alone in the building tried to remain calm when a spotlight turned on, and followed his every move while he walked around the auditorium. When students made fun of the man's sighting, he dared one or more of them to spend a night alone in the place. A young couple accepted the challenge, but left before daybreak after watching the spring-loaded seat bottoms of the rows and rows of chairs fold down as though invisible patrons were sitting down to watch a non-existent performance. Teacher Bill Williamson was responsible for processing the photographs for the school's yearbook. To complete the task on time, Williamson stayed in the school one night until nearly midnight. More than pictures developed that evening. While Williamson worked in the empty building, he distinctly heard a classroom door opening. Reasoning that the night janitor had come back to retrieve some forgotten article, the teacher paid no attention to the sounds until he heard voices that seemed to indicate that there were many people in the building. Convinced that someone was playing a trick on him, the teacher went to investigate. He saw absolutely nothing, but felt a sudden draft of icy cold air move over him, even though there were no doors or windows open. Williamson searched the entire building but found that he was still completely alone, and yet the noises continued. Grabbing a portable light, Williamson retraced his steps. He planned to catch the jokester by flashing the light in his or her eyes. Suddenly, a door at the end of the room flew open with enough force to dent the wall behind it. Williamson aimed the light. The beam illuminated the shadow of a man, but nothing solid that could have cast such a silhouette. With that, Bill Williamson had seen more than enough. He fled from the school, vowing to accomplish all of his future tasks in the daylight hours only. The only clue to the identity of the ghost is the legend of a construction worker who supposedly fell to his death during renovations to the auditorium area. Hopefully you enjoyed this chapter, and in the next episode, we will start the last chapter of Ghost Stories of Washington, Chapter 8, Phantoms with a Mission. Until then, have a great day, and we will see you in the next episode. Take care. Bye for now.